The spring of 2013. It's when all this started for me. I can remember sitting with my parents. It was really just the average Sunday morning breakfast. But I was also on the verge of graduation. All those pre-graduation questions had been nagging at me, just the same as any other 17-year-old would. Life post-high school was an exciting, frightening, and unknown experience that I looked to face. And all too soon. I didn't know a lot back then, and there's still much for me to learn today. But I did know how I wanted to live my life, free of financial stress. So then, how does a 17-year-old start to navigate a life free of financial stress? That is, after all, what most adults twice my age still struggle to master. So, I did what any good 17-year-old would do. I asked my parents. One fateful Sunday morning breakfast, I asked my parents, what would they say would attribute to a life free of financial stress? What are the two biggest payments the average adult would worry about? The answers came to them, simple enough as they tended to. They said that if they had, as adults, could have avoided a car payment and a mortgage, or were able to just have both those payments be incredibly low, that they'd be able to live a financially free life. A life that my silly, naive 17-year-old self craved. A life that most people of any age would crave, really. But to me, it was different. Because I was me. And that's all there was to it, right? The stage was set, and I knew what I'd be dedicating my adult years to. With the car being the cheapest of the two, between a house and a car, it was decided that I'd knock that one out first, and then tackle the beast that was a home. As anyone who's actually done it can attest to, going out on your own is no easy feat. Navigating life at that age, lying to yourself that you have any clue at what's going on, or what you want out of it. I was never a salesman for college, though I did go down that route for a short time. It was a thing to do, and although I saw and knew and understood better, I had a scholarship that had paid for my first 2 years of tuition, and I figured I might as well put that to good use. So, it was off to college with me, and overall delaying my financial freedoms, which were the goals that I had set forth for myself at the time. I was set to take a 2-year certification program, and I'd graduate with a certificate for IT networking. I hated networking, and if I would have continued my degree program, I would have gone into web development. That just made a lot more sense to me. Anyway, the school signed me up for a math class when I was supposed to have taken the prerequisite, and they didn't call me to fix this until after open enrollment had ended. I came right to the school counselor, or whatever that person was, to fix the issue, but they told me that since this was after open enrollment, I would have to pay for that semester, as they couldn't apply my scholarship. Well, I couldn't afford even a semester of school working part-time at Subway, so I dove into full-time work, with the idea of bouncing back and finishing my program after that semester. To be real, I was all too anxious to find my way out of school. I had just graduated from high school and was never very anxious to go right back into being in school. I was still very excited to be done with that portion of my life. After a toxic first job experience, which is a story for another video all in and of itself, anyway, after this failed first job, I landed a full-time gig at Home Depot, and I was honestly pretty satisfied with where I was in life. And, as I accepted the reality that I wouldn't be going back to school, my original thoughts of financial freedom began to creep back into my mind. I was making decent money for a 19-year-old, and I was starting to realize my plan. Still living with my parents, my cost of living was at an all-time low. I got to stock away ugly amounts of money and put it all towards my first financial step, a car. I decided that I was going to set all these landmark achievements around landmark birthdays. 21 was to be the birthday for my car. And at 19, going on 20, that didn't give me much time to save that kind of money, even with the incredible savings I was accomplishing. So, I needed to figure out a way to get more cash. The simplest way seemed to get another job. That was, after all, the only option available to me at the time for making money, and the only way that I could go towards building any sort of wealth. Combine that with the fact that my life was putting me in a pretty lame place with my hobbies as well. This was like 2016, 2017 time, and I stand by the fact to this day that at that time the gaming market was drying out. Video games were my primary hobby, and I was being bombarded from all sides with problems with that hobby. The games were not near as fun as they'd ever been. Most of my Xbox friends had graduated or otherwise moved on from that platform and/or stage of life, and I was spending way too much time gaming. At the time, I was working from 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and I would get home around 2 o'clock, flip on my Xbox, and game until 10 p.m. Wake up, go to work, rinse and repeat the next day all week long. I came to the eventual realization that I was dumping insane hours into these video games, which were getting me nowhere towards my goals and weren't even fun anymore. So, I made a move that I thought would help me with both of my problems. It'd put me closer to my goals and allow me to appreciate video games again. I got a second job, working from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at a local bank. The money would all go towards the car that I was saving for, and in my mind, by giving myself less time to play video games, I'd be more appreciative of that time when I finally had it. Though that wasn't really the case, as I ultimately concluded that it was just a bad game market at the time and gaming was just largely not appealing to me anymore. I would instead dive deeper into writing, but then again, that is another story for its own video. The second job helped me with my goals and helped me with my life. I was able to stock away more money than I had, and I had found a more fulfilling hobby. I paid for my car in cash, April of 2016, just weeks before my 21st birthday. I had done it. I'd saved enough to buy a car outright, and just to make a statement, I paid for it in cash. Yet another story for a future video. But here I was, a freshly 21-year-old, and now I owned my own car outright, and had already gotten halfway to my goal of living a financially stress-free life. All was good, and I was on a pretty triumphant high at the time. A high that could not last, because after all, the car was only half of my journey. When I had committed to living a life where money held no weight on me, where my money didn't hang over my head, where I might be allowed to spend freely, when I had made that commitment, there were two parts to accomplishing that goal. And now, it was time for the second part. The more complex of the two parts, and not near as straightforward as what I had just accomplished. It was time, of course, for the house. The plan initially was to save up and get a solid down payment on a house, same as what I'd done with the car, but bigger, and bigger, of course. The job deck had shuffled a bit by this time as well. Instead of working mornings at Home Depot and evenings at the bank, I was now working Monday through Wednesday at Home Depot and Thursday through Sunday at a local hospital. The two jobs allowed me for more savings than what I had managed before, but the hours were pretty unforgiving. But I made it work, and I stocked away some serious cash again. Eyes set on a house. I can remember when I set out with these two jobs, working 7 days a week. People were placing bets on how long I'd last, and when I'd finally burn out. I distinctively remember someone giving me 2 weeks, saying that I'd only be working that schedule for 2 whole weeks. If anything, that just drove me harder to prove that bum wrong. I lasted a year and a month on that schedule before getting a new schedule at the hospital, which allowed me to work mornings at Home Depot and evenings at the hospital. Although I was working more hours with the new schedule, having those 2 weekend days off made the world of difference. I was working 65 hours a week at that time, and I cruised on that for 3 whole years. And in that time, my plan for a house, of course, morphed. I went from planning to do a hefty down payment to potentially even building my own place. 3 years is a good stretch of time, and things are bound to change in that kind of time as well. My brother was looking to launch a career in construction, and talks of us starting to build my own house had started to manifest. My brother would use this project to start his business, and I'd have my own home to live in. It was a win-win, and with my brother and me doing a bulk of the labor, we'd save pretty intensely on the overall cost of things as well. The stage was set by 2019, and I was able to nab a reasonable plot of land to build a dream home on. Though, any of you out there probably know why 2019 is a bad time to be diving into something like this. It wouldn't be long before the pandemic would be popping off. Shutdowns ceased construction, layoffs threatened the job market, and the skyrocketing cost aimed to ruin my financial freedom. It was not a good time to be building a home, but I was already 1 foot in by the time the pandemic was in full swing. We were framing by the time the shutdowns started to hit, and we were just stuck from there. We worked around what restrictions we could and navigated the struggles that needed to be navigated. Luckily, working both at Home Depot and at a hospital gave me some solid job protection. Job stability never came into question, but the cost of everything was looking to be concerning. Even with my 2 jobs, I was only bringing in so much cash. My brother and I had the labor covered, but I still had to take a loan out for the building materials. The delays and the shutdowns probably helped me in the long run, as it served to slow down the whole process, allowing me to build up more cash to throw at it. I wanted to have as low a loan as possible without draining my emergency fund, so taking our time with the build, even forcefully so, really did help maintain that. I was the guy who changed all the price labels at Home Depot, so I actively watched the prices for building supplies climb during the wake of the pandemic. I can remember peers at Home Depot advising that I wait it out, and that after everything calmed down, the prices of everything would mellow back down. Bless their hearts, because they really did have my best interest in mind, but thank goodness I was too young and stubborn to listen. I built the thing despite it all, and by the end of it, I had bought my building materials at 3 times more expensive than what they had been priced just months prior. By the time I moved into my house in 2021, building materials were 5 times more expensive than they'd been since the start of the pandemic. Even now, in 2025, we still haven't got anywhere near to those sweet 2018-2019 prices. And not to toot my own horn too much, but I kinda knew that at the time. At what time in history have things gone back down to the prices they used to be? Like, prices might normalize a bit, but they'll never go all the way back down to where they were. It just doesn't work like that. So I decided to just take the hit and keep building. And thank goodness I did, because I'd only be spending more money the longer I waited. Not to mention that I would be putting off anything else that I hoped to do if I kept putting off the building of this house. It was safe to assume that with building materials having gone up 3 times in price, that my loan would be 3 times as much as I'd intended for it to be as well. At the end of it all, in 2021, I moved into my house and my loan had only bloated by about 1.7 times as much as I had originally anticipated for it to cost. Despite everything I'd overcome by building this house and a great future for myself, amid a pandemic no less, this was ultimately viewed as a failure by me. I'd gone over budget. Everything about this revolved around the cost, and the idea of not having too much of a cost. This idea of a failure hung over me for a good while, and it wasn't until I allowed myself to listen to some of my Home Depot friends again that I'd finally wake up and smell just what I'd done. The fact remains that any construction project goes over budget. Anybody who's done anything of the sort knows that to be an undeniable truth. So the fact that I'd gone over budget was inevitable. I didn't know it was safe to make such an assumption at the time, and even if I had known that, I would have been too young and too stubborn to think that I'd fall victim to it. I'd somehow be better than that and avoid some statistic that even the smartest and talented of people in the world couldn't best. But even with all that considered, I'd only gone over budget by like 1.7, which came out to be about $16,000 in the long run. That'd be a normal overage under normal circumstances. The fact that I was able to maintain my budget so well and only go over by $16K when the numbers and everything else would suggest that I should have gone over by like $60,000 or more easily was an incredible feat that I needed to realize. And when I finally allowed myself to realize that, and to stop viewing a success as a failure, and to stop kicking myself over a victory, only then did I finally come to the full realization of my accomplishments. It was now 2022 or 2023, but I finally was able to fully see and appreciate what I'd done. I still wasn't even 30, and I had done what I'd set out to do. I was actively living a life free of financial stress, and I was finally able to realize it. And with that came the truest sense of freedom that I've realized and experienced thus far. I hope this story serves as a means to show you the practicality of building wealth, freedom, and comfort. You don't have to be some money guru, some investing mojo, or a swindling baddie to accomplish these things. Hard work and dedication can get you there. It got me there, and it can absolutely get you there as well. Set a goal and keep it clear in your mind. Life will happen. We all know the pandemic was one heck of a monkey wrench, but I persevered past it, and I refused to let it pin me down or dash my dreams. Your setbacks may not be as severe or obvious as a pandemic. It may just be a toxic relation or a bad habit. See it. Acknowledge it and push past it. You can capitalize on the same opportunities I have, just with hard work and dedication. But you have to work hard and you have to be dedicated to your goals. If it were easy, everyone else would be doing it. And most things worth having take more work than we're ever willing to put in. And you have to stay on point and determined with that goal. This can't wind up just being another New Year's resolution. We have a finite amount of time on this earth, and our lives are unpredictably short. None of us know how much time we've got on this earth, but it's always guaranteed to be too short, regardless. We have a multitude of interests and like to bounce from thing to thing to thing, but it's important to stay out there and stay focused on the goals that'll build you a better future and create a free life for you. I know you can do this, so go out there and start some impactful changes today, bud. I write my own fiction novels, and I have my own animation here on YouTube. If you want to support me, I'd love for you to check those out. Links in the bio. Now go out there and seize this life, bud.